Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome back again to the NPTEL online certification course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. So, in my last lecture, we discussed about data representation and its inferences, where to use those kind of graphical representation like bar chart, pie chart, heat maps, histogram, then scatter plot. So many types that we have discussed over there. Today, we will continue the same discussion, but our perspective or our subject will be like other type of representation, like how we can represent the information, the analyzed data in a tabular form, or maybe like that can be represent better with certain sort of special map or special information that we want to showcase through some kind of special representation. And sometimes also we can use simple text to showcase the information. So, broadly taking these three aspects of tabular representation, spatial representation and your textual representation, we will be discussing this lecture number 35 titled Representation of Data and Inferences Part 2. So, in this case we will be broadly discussing about the tabular representation, spatial representation and textual representation. We have discussed in detail about the graphical representation and hope you have understood all types of graphical representation and their effective use in it. So, let us start with the tabular representation. So, tabular representation means where we represent the data in a table format, right. So, normally a table is having like column and rows. So, columns and rows, but depending on the type of information that we want to showcase. So, there are different naming of those kind of tables. Okay. Let us discuss one by one. First, a simple table, right. This is just something like where we store the data. We use different columns for certain variables, certain inputs, and we can use the rows for certain category. But it depends on the research purpose, or it is the convenient of the researcher how they will consider the column and rows. Maybe in some cases one may use columns and rows interchangeably. Somewhere the columns can be represented by certain category and then these are variables. Somewhere for the perception study one may use the columns like as a respondent number and then these are variables. So, it depends on the need and which can better represent the overall outcome, right. So, a simple table, a basic table structure with rows and columns, each column represent a different variable and each row represent a data record. Typically, it is used for small data set when simplicity is required. So, in this case you can see this is percentage marks of students, these are the serial number 3 students and these are their enrollment number, again these are hypothetical numbers, and then for this particular student it is the math subject where that student scored 85% marks. This is another student and this is another subject, and in this physics that particular student scored 82% marks, and then same for the another student and 75% marks. So, why there is a need to change the enrollment number and also the subjects? For this particular example, this is something I am just I wanted to convey to you all that this is the table where it's just putting the information. It is not representing any kind of relationship, or it is not being normalized, that it could be something that this particular enrollment number, they are different student, but the subjects remain same, that we would like to know that in mathematics how these three students performed. So, this is just as a table representation. So, many a times we represent the table, not only showcase the values, but also like say for example description of the variable. So, there you simply make a table like this. Say maybe you just want to summarize the findings of a extensive literature review. So, you can then create those kind of tables like authors, where you can write the authors, then you can say the relevance, maybe this is the country where the study had been done, then the variables they considered, and maybe you can add some other value, that methods. So, like that you keep on listing all those things. So, author say X, author Y, author Z, and country, maybe this is India, this is China, this is maybe you can say that this is Rome, and then the variables they considered something for a particular topic, you can list it down, and the method they have used. So, you can create anything to tabulate. So, this is very much simple, just structure them in some rows and columns. So, that is why it is represented as simple table. Coming to flat table, this is also similar to the simple table only, but there is a difference. So, in this case it is basically a single two-dimensional array of data elements, often used in spreadsheet program and database system, where you will find that the type of information they are normalized. So, in this case, like this is nothing but you can say that these are different customer ID, their first name, last name, and then you have their email ID, and then membership to a particular uh, you know customer base. So, active, inactive, active. So, this is much more normalized to figure it out. It is not like that we are changing some of the things here and there, right. So, this is flat table. So, many a time simple table, flat table, they are used in a similar way, but just as the purpose we have to look into it, like how structurally it is done. So, normally in spreadsheet or the Excel sheet we maintain it. Next up, it is the multi-dimensional table. So, how it is different from the previous two? So, these tables are used when the data needs to be presented in more than two dimensions, often involves the layering, where one or more headers are layered atop the columns or beside the rows. So, in this case you can say that the example is the sales data for a particular company over quarters by region. So, in this case if you see that there are information, first is about the sale data, second the quarter, as well as the region, and the only variables that we have here is the product A and product B. So, that is why it is multidimensional. So, looking at this, what is clear, that for particular sales data, these are the each sales, that you get the sale data, how many product were sold, and then in quarter 1, quarter 2, and also if you say the zone. So, east, west, south, these are broad three zones that hypothetically we have captured this information. So, if you say that in quarter 1 you have 200 product A sold, and then you have another information in quarter 2. So, there is certain kind of increase of 30 plus 30 from quarter 1 to quarter 2 and in the same zone. So, you can represent this particular case through this table. So, where you have multiple information in the table. So, that is why it is multidimensional table. Next we have the cross tabulation table or the cross tab. So, this is normally used to examine the relationship within the data that might not be readily apparent. So, it is to be made, this table should be made with proper care, so that it can represent the relationship among the data. It also displays the frequency distribution of variables along with the row and column totals, commonly used in statistical analysis and market research, and that too also in planning and architectural research. So, this is something where this is one again hypothetical example where it is trying to identify some sort of frequency of customer satisfaction by age group and product. So, for that definitely in this particular case we have 3 different age groups under 20 years, 20 to 40 years and over 40 years for that particular the customer base. Then you have product A, B, C, 3 products, and then also these individual sales are nothing but the customers who are satisfied with that product. But only thing is that here you can see that particular difference among the age groups that are considered as a customer and also the different type of products. Additionally, it is going to give you some sort of total, the row total and the column total. So, column total is nothing but to give you the overall satisfaction, the frequency of satisfied customer for product A, where this particular case what you get, it is showing you the total satisfaction or satisfied customer under age group 20. So, this is very much required, right. Okay. So, in this case also you can get, say for example, if you take this 60, so that represent that the product C, the total satisfied customer is 60, but if we want to understand that out of 60 who are satisfied most with the age group, so here it is clearly identifiable that over 40 years they are satisfied with product C. Now, compared to that, probably the age group, if you consider 20 to 40, in that case this value changes. So, in this case definitely that product C is the least preferred compared to the other two, and product B is the most preferred, or maybe you can say the in that case that people are more satisfied with, because whenever you are having those kind of satisfaction, so that means there are certain kind of preferences. So, for this particular table if we read, so product B 30 customer they are satisfied, they belongs to age group 20 to 40. Next we have this frequency distribution table that we discussed earlier as well, like where I have shown you the simple frequency or the group frequency. So, normally in this case this kind of frequency tables shows the frequency of various outcomes in a very simple way. Each entry in the table contains the frequency or the count of the occurrence of values within a particular group or interval. So, in this particular case, if you say that in this frequency that this is the frequency of score in a particular game. So, the score ranges from 0 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 30, 31 to 40, where it is having some sort of discrete value. So, you cannot have any value like 10.5 in that case. So, that is why the range bins are taking like this, but it may happen that in some cases you get also this kind of frequency, but for this particular case it is something like the game score are having these ranges and then frequency, the players who scored within that kind of range, it is just the count. So, here from this frequency table what we can infer that maximum like gamer like 30 or 25, they are having a score from 11 to 30. So, 11 to 20 is 30 and then 21 to 30 that is 25, whereas that 15 such kind of gamers who scored less than 10, within 10, or maybe up to 10 you can say as per this particular data, and then only 10 gamers could able to make the score from 31 to 40. So, this frequency table is also very important, and depending on your research need you can use it effectively. Coming to the next type of table, which is also very interesting, this is the contingency table, a type of table in a matrix format that display the multivariate frequency distribution of variables, often used in statistical analysis to show the observed frequency of data elements. They are classified according to two variables. So, say for example, this is another interesting hypothetical example, like having the pet ownership by gender, right. So, from a survey, this is something again a frequency, but in this case we are making two groups as well, like those owner like of those pets, like the ownership can be of cat, can be of dog, or it can be neither of them. And then finally we would like to understand that about that out of those kind of owners of those pets, how many of them are female and how many of them are male. So, male female they are two broad category, and then cat dog they are the measurable values where we have to give the count of that. So, in this case how to read it? So, if we read it in this case like about the dog. So, in this case definitely the male they have higher ownership compared to female, where compared to cat then female they are having slightly higher in number about this particular cat. So, in this case total ownership, if you just try to understand that in particular study that total 80 is number where 80 male person were interviewed about the pet, and then out of that the 10 they said they do not have the pet, and then they have like 30 cat and 40 dogs. And similarly, if you try to infer this, the total out of 70 female respondent, 5 of them they said they have neither dog or cat, and then they have this 30 cats and 35 cats and then 30 dogs. So, in this case in the entire study, if we go for this kind of column total, so in this case you get 65. So, total 65 cats and 70 dogs. So, within that study area the predominance little bit it is higher, at least 5 owners they are having dogs more than compared to that of cat, and this is nothing but this total is representing the total number of respondent, that includes the owners of cat or dog or neither of cat and dogs in the study. So, this is the contingency table, very effective, and you can use it whenever, like depending on your type of information that you want to fill in. Correlation table is very important for any statistical analysis. So, to check the dependency or the correlation among the variables, so we perform correlation and we can showcase it in form of either certain graph, or maybe we can use this with the table. So, here it is nothing but giving you a correlation matrix. So, say for example, if you have 3 data points, so 3 variables. So, this is something 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. So, this is something like you have to find the correlation. So, normally if you observe, earlier also I have mentioned that diagonally you always get the correlation as 1. So, stock to stock. So, this is a correlation coefficient among different investment. So, for that you can see that diagonally it is always 1, and then you can have, like if you know the half side of diagonally half of that particular table, the matrix, you can also compute the other half. So, say for example, the correlation coefficient between your stock and bonds, this is having some sort of negative correlation. Again, it is hypothetical data, but just try to see that particular negative sign is showing some sort of negative relationship between this. Then you have stock and real estate, where you have some sort of positive correlation, and then the stock and gold is positive, but it is having very low value. The correlation normally that can have a value 0 to 1, and it can have either positive or negative in that particular sense. Now, similarly, if you say bonds to bonds is 1, as because it is like the same kind of investment, and then with the real estate again it is negative, but it is positive with the gold, and then there are certain sort of uh, understanding that you need to develop based on the past literature and the standard value expected. You have to read this kind of correlation table very well. So, normally whenever the value is appear to be close to 1, okay, or at least more than 0.6 or so, it is like highly correlated zone, right. If you have a value 0.8 or something, where if it very close to 0, then also the correlation is very weak, and positive and negative is determining about changing behavior. So, if you change one variable, how other will react to this. So, that is something you can say that can give you the sign positive or negative, but the degree of correlation, that is something you should get it from those values. If it is close to 1, it is strongly correlated, if not it is like weakly correlated, or maybe if it is 0, so there is no correlation. That is why you can get this particular value, because whenever you try to find out the stock and stock, it should be like 100%. This way also you can reduce certain kind of factors, or suppose if you find two variables are very closely related, so you can merge them, or maybe you can treat them as a single variable, or maybe there are other interpretation of the correlation table that we discussed when we discussed certain case studies where we have used the correlation as well. Next up is the hierarchical table. So, in this case it represents the data that naturally forms one hierarchy. The table displays the relationship similar to a tree structure. So, in this case what is happening? So, maybe this is some sort of company organizational structure. So, in that particular organizational structure, so label 1 represent the CEO, and in label 2 they have two particular department, that marketing and operations, and then another hierarchy label 3 where the team in marketing, team A is working, and in operations you have in this case team B and C. So, in team A there are two people, like this particular hypothetical name, that Alice and the Bob, and for team B it's like probably leading by this Carol D, and then team C, like this. So, it is something sometimes you can use it. Say for example, if you go for some sort of scenario analysis or some kind of choice modeling, we are using this kind of table as well. So, where you have, say for example, the broad variables. So, this is variable 1, and then you go for within that variable there are certain sort of factors. So, maybe 2 factors here, 3 factors here, and then within which you can have another label. So, within that factor label 1 which represents something, label 2 that represents something. Say for example, if I am taking say pedestrian facility. So, pedestrian facilities here also, like broadly we can classify into two. One may be the sidewalk facility, the other one is the crosswalk or crossing facility. Now, from pedestrian sidewalk, so there are certain important aspects. So, in this case probably you can say the road width, or maybe availability of the street furniture, etc., etc. Then within that, again, if you want to put up certain kind of values, that okay, in the road width there are variety, that less than 1 meter, 1 to 1.5 meter. So like that, if you want to show such kind of hierarchy which can contribute from one point to another and they are linked, so we can use this kind of hierarchy table as well to represent the overall structuring of those variables, and depending on the values also we can put it up. Now, after the table, this is something nowadays, and when we are discussing the context of planning and architecture, it is very obvious that there will be some discussion on the spatial representation, and you can use different kind of GIS platform. uh, some of them are subscribed one or something, some are available open source, but you can use it effectively to showcase the spatial data. Say for example, in this case, that the tourist density in August for London, Paris, Rimini, okay, Santorini and the Venice. So, in this particular case you can see that okay, there are certain kind of average daily number of tourists per hectare being calculated based on certain data. So, first you can get the information when you do a survey, you can get the information. If you geotag that location, if you even like for a movement, if you just geotag that movement, so you can follow up. Say for best example I can give you here at this moment, that I think many of you or all of you have used this kind of Google map, where you are going to a new place, you do not know exactly, you always see in the map. So, whenever you start that particular map from origin to destination, it will show you a particular line, right, and if you move through, if you record that movement, or maybe in Google Maps they are going to send you the historical data of your Google map use in your registered email, you can find it out that what are the places you have visited, or maybe the route that you have followed. So, along with those information, graphically when you see that this is the route or this is the place, or maybe this is the location where you get certain kind of huge footfall, so definitely that is going to give a clarity. So, for that you can use it very effectively. So, the information that you collect, that has to be geotagged. So, that can be something can be represented as a point data, because in the geographical reference you can use point data, you can use line data like showcase the all these roads and all, or it may be the you can some sort of polygon to represent the area. So, maybe some kind of study area, then maybe it is something the region that you want to demarcate, and then you can always create a different thematic map out of it. Say for example, you have the word boundaries, the shape files, or like the files which will be required in those kind of geographical software or GIS platforms. So, there you can add additional values, that okay, word wise population you have, you can create a table, but to represent it the population density with certain kind of legends. So, then you can definitely use those information and create beautiful maps which can better represent than a table, right. So, that you can do. I will show you some of such kind of application when we will be discussing the case study of this spatial method in our upcoming module. In this particular course, we as I already mentioned earlier, we have a series of case studies that I will show you the demonstration. Until that particular time, whatever the terminologies that we have discussed, the different phases of research process that we have discussed, I will show the application through those case study, and things will be, I guess, much more clear to you at that point. Now, in spatial representation, you have to use appropriate scale to first you have to geolocate it, and there are different process of it. So, definitely for that you can refer, if you are working in spatial method, I am sure that you are also learning this particular tools. So, we are not going to discuss how to create maps in this particular course, but definitely if you are interested to know more something about this, you can always write to me in the forum, and I can give you some kind of guideline or hints that helped me to create such kind of maps in our research that we are doing with my students and all. So, next definitely you should include the legends and labels very clearly, because that is something you have to read. And in normal case, like for all this, we are using the graphical scale, where like definitely a portion which is like if you see that graphical scale, something where a particular uh, width of this particular interval is representing, say in this case, this much of distance in the map representing 2 kilometers. So, that is something, even if you reduce that particular map, you take a printout in A0 size or A4 size, it does not matter, because it is a graphical scale. So, along with the map, this scale will also be reduced, printed in that proportion. And in this case, you have to ensure the accuracy, verify the accuracy and currency of all the spatial data used. So, that is why there is something, before you import all spatial information, you have to first assure that your map or your you can say that position, the coordinates, they are actually match. So, there are certain concept of WCS, World Coordinate System, to you have to map it with the World Coordinate System, so that you can use it effectively. There are certain kind of don'ts for it, and in this case, don't avoid information overload. Keep the map clear and focused. Too much detail can confuse. So, you can use different maps, but don't put so many information in a single map, multiple legends. So, it will be very tough to follow. Consider the projection effects. In this case, definitely the projection system you have to understand. So, in this projection system, definitely there are options, and that is why I am mentioning about the WCS, and you have to understand it, and there are certain kind of already predefined projection system. Based on that, the accuracy may vary. And in this case, mind the audience and purpose. So, in this case, you have to tailor the maps design and the content which can better represent, right. So, in this particular case, you have to understand the content very well, and then understanding of its intent audience, you have to prepare certain map. Coming to the last one, which is the textual representation. So, sometimes in order to describe any product or describe any phenomena, we can still use the text effectively. It is not the running text of the report or narration, but to showcase certain kind of characteristics, you can use them. Say for example, it is a random text generated for this particular example, which you can see similar kind of content when you search in the e-commerce site to identify any product. So, some product specification, description about the products, informations are there. Say this is one example of a smartwatch. Nowadays probably many of us we are using it because of multiple reason, like along with the time and other thing, we can also use this for attending or receiving calls, or maybe it can also use as a fitness wearable. So, here you can check your body vitals, depending on the features that are inbuilt in that smartwatch. Say in this case, even if I do not show you the product, but looking at say display, so you have certain idea about the display size. This will give you about some sort of resolution, and then this kind of technical information will give you the brightness level that you can adjust. Yes, for electronic gadgets, the battery life is important. So, here if the information is say something, you can get up to 8 days of battery life. So, considerably this is a good one. Charging, so in this case what kind of battery that is being used and approximate time to fully charge, or some more information like that. These are very few I have picked up, but definitely in this case these are not actual information for a particular brand or some specific smartwatch, but this is just to tell you that whenever in your research you want to display something, you want to inform your readers about certain specification of certain instrument that you use. So, this textual representation plays a crucial role, because only with this particular photograph it may not be very clear. So, in those cases, like, you can take help of this. How it is different from a normal text that we write? The entire thesis paper, or maybe you can say that journal paper that you are writing, how it is different? So, this is attributing to a particular information that you want to disseminate. It is not just writing a text and depicting the results, etc. So, this is something to represent any information in that way. So, in a particular paper, in short, now we have covered all, like graphical representation, tabular representation. In short, we have discussed about the spatial representation and then the textual. So, in a combination of all, you can really come up with a very comprehensive and very easy to follow research write up, okay, where you will maintain your scientific content. Wherever it is required to put those kind of technical term, you put it. Wherever it can be, like explained in a very explicit manner, or maybe understanding the audience, you can tailor that particular part, what kind of representation can better fit. With that, let us summarize this particular lecture, where we continue the data representation and inference. And in this particular presentation, we discussed about tabular representation, starting from simple table, flat table, cross table, then also frequency table, and then contingency table, etc. Spatial representation to represent the point data, maybe the network, the city network, land use pattern, thematic maps to showing the rainfall pattern, population density. You can use it in many ways, like whenever you intend to show some spatial information you can do, but only you have to take care of the proper projection system, the world coordinate system that will give you the accuracy of those measurement. Then the textual representation, where it can also help to demonstrate some of the facts of your research findings or research instrument, or maybe you can use it in any place where, like, it can better represent the context and content of your paper. So, with that we end up this data representation and the inference section. With that, we will be next moving to very important part of our research methodology, that is on hypothesis testing. So, this will be a very important lecture, and then I will try to make it as easy as possible to follow with certain examples. So, thank you for joining, and we will meet in our next discussion very soon. Thank you again.